Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. So I hope everybody's having a great week. Uh, we are in the midst of probably what will end up being the probably like the last really busy week of numbers, so of earnings, probably until we get to next quarter. Uh, we're gonna have plenty of names reporting between now and the beginning of April, but in terms of like an overall grouping, right? In terms of magnitude of the names reporting and the magnitude of the size of the moves expected, and just the overall, just the overall number, just in general of names reporting. This is really shaping up to be a busy week. And while I was prepping for upcoming earnings, right? So in those weekly Friday videos, while I'm doing my research and my game planning for the upcoming week, I came across Fitbit. And just being perfectly honest here, I really have not had any interest in Fitbit in a while. I really haven't followed it, haven't paid attention to it. Really, no, no real trade that's crossed my radar. It did hit an alert I had back in June. So here, so I remember like the stock surged on some volume, and I remember just like kind of glancing at it at the time, saying like, oh, that's interesting. But a month later, I completely forgot about it again. But I mean, just as I was screening for setups coming into the week, I noticed Fit, and what's interesting about it is like when I put the chart like this, like 7 8 month chart, you're like, oh, what's there to look at here, right? Um, but what's really interesting is the further back you go, because what you have now is a stock that is really in a great position to finally turn the corner, right? So you've had just this long 2 year, 2.5 year sideways consolidation. We've seen a couple of these. I've talked about these. There's been a couple names like this in the past. Acacia was just like a recent one, right? So you can see Acacia, not too dissimilar. Kind of in terms of IPOs, right? I mean, Fitbit kind of collapsed a little bit before Acacia, but I mean, basically they were two hot IPOs that really fell and had been in like kind of like mirrored and like sideways chop for a couple of years, right? So Acacia was last week, and now coming up this week is Fitbit, and you know it's it's by no means it's by no means like coming in like guns blazing, all bullish everything, but there are some positive signs. So last quarter, pretty solid, right? Beat and raise quarter. I'm guessing it probably took people by surprise because of not only the performance into numbers, but kind of like the magnitude of the move after, right? Pretty sharp pop, and yes, it did roll over. A lot of names that had really strong earnings in the October November timeframe ended up pulling back in December. I mean, it was just the overall market was so weak that it ended up just taking down most with it. But what's great and what's encouraging is the fact that it has bounced back sharply in January, right? And it's actually trading up through the top of where it was in November, right? So just doing like a quick line, right? So it's holding above 6. Now it's even better. It's flagging through the top of November high and also like this August pivot. So you have a couple good signs, right? So first, it's coming off a strong quarter, which is good, right? Maybe you get some that earnings momentum, that fundamental momentum, right? And you can start stringing good quarters together. And then B, technically, it has snapped back quick and is hanging out above where it was, so above the high, that previous high from November. So you can see that the demand has been pretty strong, right? So you have fundamentals are lining up, technicals are beginning to line up, right? So like decent underlying demand, and it's basically in position now to, if the numbers are good, to potentially retest the June high. And to be honest, with the options, weekly options pricing about 90 cents, that would more or less put it right back at that June high. I mean, if positive, right? It's not necessarily going to be positive, but if positive, It's pricing in about 90 cents, it's about $1 to retest a June high. And why that's interesting is not only would that be a higher yearly high, right? Go back again. So not only would that be a higher yearly high, but that would really open the chart up for a move into 10, right? I mean, that's like the next major level on the upside is 10, and then there's a pretty significant gap above that. I mean, first things first, a retest of this June high, and then through that, I mean, it would be a higher high, right? With some fundamental momentum, with some technical momentum, and then it would be like off into like ideally like the double digits, so like the 10 range, right, to retest like the major gap down pivot point. So it's just one of these things that's lining up. Like I said, I noticed last week Acacia kind of similar, right? It was just not the same businesses, obviously, but kind of a similar setup, right? Coming off a good quarter, right? The stock had rallied, was above some resistance, and was actually hanging out right at the top of where it was like post earnings in the end of October, November, right? So Fitbit, scrolling in again, you can see there's some similarities here, hanging out right above the top, say right above the top of where it was November earnings, right? Trying to turn the corner after a long sideways like range. Relatively recent, last couple of years, IPO gets a lot of interest from traders. So, it's worth taking a look at, right? Acacia was encouraging, and there's been other names that haven't worked, like a FireEye, but Acacia was encouraging. Good numbers, good breakout. And now maybe Fit decides to join it, right? If they can deliver another solid quarter and get a pop and maybe a higher high, then things could really start to roll for it. So it was something that I admittedly really had not been following this name for a while, but as I was screening, it popped up, and I'm thinking it's a really interesting setup this week. So I wanted to highlight it, put it on your guys' radar. So take a look. Let me know what you think. Always trying to screen for some names that maybe don't catch as many eyeballs, but it's pretty liquid options, reasonably priced right now, especially compared to what it moved last quarter. It moved about $1.50 right now. The options only priced at about 90 cents, so not bad. Take a look, all right? So yeah, questions or comments on Fitbit, questions or comments on any trades that we're in, or just anything you are interested in. Just let me know. All right. So I hope you guys have a great night. Best of luck with your trades, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.